Hello everyone, this is Rob with Thaco Thoughts with Rob, and this is episode 7. Today we're going to be talking about the fun of death. Yep, you heard me right, the fun of death. So, I've been playing since 1989, and of course I have suffered through many deaths of my characters over the years. After decades of playing, I can tell you this. The memories I have, the most vivid memories that I've had over the years is how my various characters have died, in sometimes very ridiculous and sometimes in very epic ways. Now, we've all run into players that get extremely upset and want to start blaming everybody when their characters are killed in a game. And, I understand being upset, especially if you've been working on a character for a while. You've been playing a character and you have plans for that character, and all of a sudden they die. But to me, that is simply part of the game, and it can be a fun part of the game if you have the right perception of it. Because when you step back and you look at it, what just happened? A story. You now have a story to tell, and that's part of the experience. So let me give you an example. One of my earliest characters, he was actually a wonderful character. I was really attached to him. His name was Thaco Jones. He was a swashbuckler using the swashbuckler kit out of the Fighter's Handbook. So we were playing in the Forgotten Realms, and we were in the Great Glacier. Me, a paladin, and a thief were running around this kind of ice palace that was carved into the glacier, and we were in the process of running away from a vampire. We run into this one chamber, and there's 2 doors. One door is our obvious out. We can just run through that door and be gone. The second, though, was obviously looked like some sort of treasure vault. Now, us being greedy players that we were, we're like, nope. We have to get through this treasure vault, even though there's danger lurking. So as we're arguing about who's going to try to open the door, like me and the paladin, and I'm like, well, you have better armor class, you know, just in case, blah blah blah. The thief decided, well, they're just going to go up and they're going to open the door, and without really consulting us, which is fine. Well, the trick about this particular, there was obviously a trap. And the trick is that the only person who would be safe was the one who opened the door. Because when the thief opened up the door, the floor began to pivot underneath us, sending both me and the paladin into a pit full of spears. Now this is where just pure bad luck happened. The dungeon master rolled to see how many spears hit me. Well, and it was up to 5. Well, all the spears hit me. Then I needed to roll a saving throw for half damage. And Thaco had very good saving throws. But unfortunately, I ended up rolling a 2. When I looked at that 2 sitting there, knowing that my character had just died, a lot of rage was built up in me. Okay, I picked up, it was a red D20, and I picked it up and I'm looking at this red D20. And everybody at the table said that my face was so red that all they could see was floating numbers. That's how red my face was. Then, of course, I executed that dice, by the way. That's one of the kind of funny things we used to do if a particular die betrayed us. We would have execution ceremonies back in the day. But here's who I did not get mad at. I never took it out on the dungeon master. I never blamed the dungeon master for the death of my characters. Because whenever you examine things, it's usually either you made a poor decision, or it was just simply the luck of the die roll. But you have to understand, when Thaco died, this was literally close to about 30 years ago. And I still remember that moment so vividly. So a disclaimer I want to put in real quick. is that, of course, after everything I've said, there are dungeon masters out there that have done the rocks fall, everybody dies routine. We've all been there. A dungeon master may be having a very bad day and just wants to see the player suffer. I would just simply talk to the dungeon master. Always be nice at first and try to work it out. If you honestly feel that the dungeon master put you in a truly no-win scenario, and if this is a behavior that this particular dungeon master is known for, unfortunately, the only thing you can do is just get up and walk away. I can accept death when it is a series of bad rolls or a decision that I myself made that put myself in a position of possible death. But like I said, there are times when the dungeon master just seems to be out for you. And I think that with experience, you can suss out those types of people, those types of dungeon masters. And unfortunately, the only real advice is to simply avoid them. Try to talk to them at first. Maybe, like I said, maybe they were just having a bad day. But many times, there is that adversarial mentality with certain dungeon masters who think it's their job to kill you when it's not. I myself have, especially when I'm running Dungeons and Dragons, is that I try to remain as neutral as possible. I will allow the dice to kill you, but I don't want the dice to kill you. And here's why. Because I have been working on this game, right? I want to see the players progress. I want to see the players discover the things that I have put into the story, to put into the game. But here's the kicker. If I'm allowing the players just to basically survive left and right, constantly cheating the dice just to make sure they can see everything that I've created, I feel that I have cheated the players out of a true experience, a true victory. And it's the same thing for me as a player. Okay, I would rather die than be given victory by the dungeon master. Has anybody experienced the situation where you sit down and you play a game with somebody, and whether it's chess, board game, doesn't matter what it is, and when you get to the end and you're victorious, the other person indicates that they went soft on you or they let you win? That is always been a very frustrating situations for me, because it's like these people are trying to snatch your victory by saying, oh, well, I let you win. Oh, I went soft on you. See, it never really made any sense to me for people to hold back when they're playing a game. Because if you're holding back and the person wins, then did they really win? Same thing in Dungeons & Dragons. Of course, it's not about winning in Dungeons & Dragons, but it's about earning your victories, right? If you are fighting some overwhelming foe and the dungeon master is just simply hand waving everything just to keep you alive, to me, that's not much of a victory, is it? Because it doesn't matter what mistakes you make. It doesn't matter if you played highly intelligently or very stupid. The end result is going to be the same. So what is there to remember? What is there to brag about? So, like I said, this is why I believe, that especially in a Dungeons and Dragons setting, in a Dungeons and Dragons game, the Dungeon Master needs to have as much of a neutral attitude as possible. You can cheer for the players, root for the players, but don't cheat for the players, because all you're doing is downgrading their play. To me, this is what you do for children. You give a child an easy victory. You go soft on a child because you don't want to hurt their feelings. But I suspect for most of us, we're playing with young adults to adults who should be able to handle loss and the deaths of their characters. And unfortunately, there are going to be players that lack that maturity level. And unfortunately, that type of mentality is usually ingrained in people. And once more, you try to communicate this to them in a very constructive way and try to steer them away from that. But the one thing you should not do is allow an immature player to bring down the game. Okay? If somebody can't handle death, if somebody can't, see things with through a lens of humor, then just cut them out. I mean, I know it's harsh, but I've been doing this a long time, and what I find is that when you try to bend over backwards too much for a player, you will more than likely regret it in the long run. So, but anyway, so back to the death can be fun aspect of this particular episode. So death is not the end, or necessarily the end, in a Dungeons and Dragons game. There's always the possibility of resurrection, sending off the other players on a grand quest to try to have your character, raised. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of different story elements that could surround the death of your character. I mean, look at some of the great death scenes in literature. You will like Sturm Brightblade from Dragonlance. And I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but Sturm is a great example of a very epic and emotional death of a character. And of course, everybody, if you don't know who Boromir is from Lord of the Rings, then go ahead and turn in your nerd card. But we've all seen that epic emotional scene in Lord of the Rings after Boromir sacrifices his life to defend Merry and Pippin, and his talk with Aragorn. That's what I'm talking about. Don't get mad at death or the death of your character. Use it as an opportunity for a great story, for great role play. And that's one of the things that Dungeon Masters need to think about. If a character dies, don't just roll the dice and say, well, your character's dead. Give the player a chance to go out with a little epicness. Give the character or the player a chance to give a little speech, right? Just because the character reaches 0 or whatever rule you're using doesn't necessarily mean that they have to expire in that moment. Give them a chance. Now, there will be people that try to ruin a good dramatic death scene with rules. Like, for instance, somebody technically is dead on paper, but then you're like, well, I'm going to give the player a chance to give a little death speech or do something meaningful. And then, you'll inevitably have the guy playing the cleric. It's like, well, if he's still alive, then then I should be able to just cast, cure light wounds on him, and they're back up. To be honest with you, you should put your foot down on this and just simply say, well, his wounds are too severe. He is going to die, but he is using his last remaining breath to give a little speech. Maybe do one little action, right? Maybe there's a lever that needs to be pulled in order to save the other players, and with his last ounce of strength, the character crawls over to that lever, pulls it, and saves everybody, but then expires almost immediately. Those are the situations that that both players and dungeon masters should, ironically enough, live for. Okay. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and draw this to a close, but I tell you one thing, I have many stories about the deaths of my characters, and I find them funny, fascinating, very memorable. So if anybody out there has a great story about a character death, I would love to hear it. And as usual, you can find videos like this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And this video or this podcast is brought to you by the Evil Dungeon Master. And with that, I bid you adieu.